It doesn't matter whether you're in Carolina, Memphis, or Kansas City. At the end of the day, it's about the sauce. We're going to talk about him today, get into our combine preview, and some sleepers that you all need to know about. Welcome to Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Show. I'm your host, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Eric Crocker. And of course, as always, I'm joined by my guy, Ryan Tracy from Rogue Analytics and John Harris, footballtakeover.com. We're going to kick this whole thing off by kind of talking about a cornerback who is really climbing charts. And he's not new to the scene, but Sauce Gardner, Ahmad Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati. I think a lot of people have talked about him and things that he does well. But I think now that people are really being able to dive into the film and really get an idea of who he is and what he does well, you're hearing a lot of talks about a guy potentially being CB1 in his class. John Harris, I know you've kind of paid a little attention there to him as well as of late. What are some of your thoughts?
He's confounding to me in some sense, Eric, because you see every single trait that you want in a corner. And I don't know that there is any player in this draft that epitomizes his hometown more than Sauce Gardner does from Detroit. Because when you hear, when all of us hear Detroit, what do we all think about? Like, ooh, those some bad dudes from Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, in Houston, we had Desmond King last year, and Dez was kind of the same way. Like, you didn't want to go down a dark alley with Dez because he was a bad dude, and he played that way. And I think Sauce plays the same way. The unfortunate aspect of it is Sauce. And I was watching him again today, and it got me thinking about it. I was watching him against University of Houston in the AAC championship, and I noticed one thing that I think is going to get him not only beat in the NFL, but I think he's going to have to make changes, or it's going to be a big problem. When the ball is snapped in quarterback or the wide receiver hot foot release, whatever kind of release he's going to make, if there's any hesitation at all, the first thing that moves for Sauce is hands. His feet are frozen. He's always reaching. The very first thing he does is reach. And, you know, they say in basketball, you reach, I teach. When he gets to NFL receiver level, boy, it's going to be problematic. The thing that frustrates me about him, guys, is the fact that when he does reach and he feels like he's almost then going to fall out of phase, he immediately gets right back in phase just by trusting his feet and trusting his speed. Yeah. And it's one of those traits and habits that if he can't break it and he's grabbing Justin Jefferson or he's grabbing DeAndre Hopkins or he's grabbing one of these outside perimeter receivers, Mike Evans, I mean, those guys are going to blow by him and end up making him look foolish. If he trusts his feet and he trusts his technique and he can back the hands off a little bit, I think he can be CB1 in this draft. But in our league, you guys know, man, guys are getting popped if they hold on at 8 yards, 9 yards, 10 yards downfield. And it doesn't have to be that egregious either. College guys get away with everything. It's amazing to watch a college game and holy smokes, these corners can just demolish dudes. But at the NFL, he's going to get flagged for some of that stuff. And so I have him at number 19, the Harris 100. He right now is CB2. I still think Stingley's got the assets and the traits. I just want to see him play. But I don't want to say I'm on the fence about Sauce because I really think he can play. But, man, if it doesn't get cleared up, it's going to be a bad habit that he's going to have to break very early in his NFL career.
I'm glad that you kind of touched on that because the NFL, one thing people forget, back in the, I don't want to say the old days.
I'd say back in the old days.
But in the old days, we'll say the 90s, all right? Back in the 90s, you used to be able to be much more aggressive with receivers down the field. College, high school, they still have that same rule where there is no illegal contact. And I think a lot of fans forget that's something newer to the NFL. So essentially in high school, college, you can actually reroute a guy. We'll use that word. You can reroute a guy. You can touch a guy. You can shove him as all the way down the field, as long as the ball is not in the air. The NFL, you cannot do that. Once it's past 5 yards, you're likely to get an illegal contact call. And yeah, they just definitely made life tougher on the cornerbacks in the NFL for coverage in general. But that is one thing where a guy like Sauce, I like that you talked about at the line of scrimmage. You know, he's not using feet before hands. And that's what we like to say, feet before hands, where you're kind of activating the feet and your feet are going to put you in a position to be able to get hands on. That's something that he definitely can get a little bit more comfortable doing at the line of scrimmage. When he does use feet before hands, it looks beautiful. I think he has loose hips. And for a guy that's listed at 6'3", 200 pounds, you know, those guys are usually a little tight hipped. Their change of direction isn't as ideal. But this year, and I don't know if it's since he switched over from number 12 to number 1, he looks much more fluid. And if he's going to continue to be that guy that is more fluid and have the length and have good feet, when he trusted, like you were saying, John, I think he is someone that potentially can be the number 1 corner in this class that people think he could be. What have you seen from him, Ryan?
When you're losing 11 off of your number, I think that just helps. There's no way around it. But I took it a step farther. I think you guys are spot on. But for me, it turned to the projection, because it's got to be about the scheme fit for me. Because you're right, E, when he does move his feet first, when he's quick into the rep, he does fine. So for me, it's either got to be you lay him off a little bit, let him play zone, or he's got to be a press guy. These teams that like to sit in the no man's land and we're playing man, but we're not putting our hands on anybody early in the rep, I think that's a recipe for disaster. You either got to press him or you got to let him play off, in my opinion. So we'll see how he adapts and who lets him do what.
Yeah, there was one rep I was watching against Alabama, and, you know, I think ideally he probably would like to play at the line of scrimmage more. He got caught having to play off, and it wasn't bad, but maybe not as ideal as you would like. But I'll tell you some things that he does extremely well. His eyes from zone are terrific. And one thing that I really love is a guy that can read concepts and read routes from press alignment. And he does extremely well, where he does it. I call it pressure key, visual key. All right, so your pressure key is the guy in front of you, but your visual key is maybe, if it's cover 2, is going to be either the number 2 receiver or a back coming out the backfield, or maybe a number 3 receiver. But you have to be able to get your hands on one and read and see if anybody's going to threaten your zone in the flats. If not, you can carry it. If somebody does come out, then you have to shoot and make a tackle in the backfield. I think he does that extremely well. But one thing he did that really stood out to me, and he did this against Alabama as well, he was actually in man coverage. Watching it on TV, I thought, oh, he was in cover 2. He used pressure key, visual key, got his hands on one. You know, somebody came out in the flats. He came down and he made a tackle. Well, when I watched the all 22 of it, this is a single high safety. So he's in man coverage. And I look at everybody else, the linebackers, the other corner, everybody's playing man. He actually was in man. And once he had the receiver controlled at the line of scrimmage, and as he ran kind of this little slant route, he had him controlled. He was able to peek in the backfield, see the quarterback raise his arm to throw it. He peeled off of his guy while in man coverage and made a tackle for a minimal gain. I thought that was terrific. It shows that his eyes are always in the right spot, and it shows that he trusts his ability. The physicality continued to jump out throughout that game. That was one of the things I was really excited about, especially for a guy like him. And then how does he play when he's going up against a guy like Jameson Williams? Because, you know, playing in Cincinnati's conference, he's not playing against elite receivers week in and week out, right? But, you know, when you watched him against Alabama and you want to see how is he going to do playing against that type of guy, I thought he looked comfortable. I thought he looked at home. And I think his skill set is definitely going to transition very well to the NFL.
I know for us in Houston, we play a lot of zone. I don't want to label him a zone corner at all because, Eric, I'm right with you. When they were playing University of Houston, now Tank Dell is only about 155 pounds, and he has the nickname of Tank. But Tank Dell can run. He's a legit 4.3 track guy. I mean, he can absolutely smoke. And Sauce Gardner was stride for stride, hip to hip with him down the field. I don't worry about Sauce's ability to go down the field and stay in a hip pocket and those kind of things at all. I don't worry about that. But I look at a team like us. Would I take him? Heck yeah, I would. because it amps up our physicality. We do play some zone. Like you said, love his instincts. And I think he would fit really, really well for us because we don't play enough man where we would get hurt a lot of times with a rookie playing man coverage. I just think from our perspective, and we probably talked about this a little bit, where's the focus for your team? Where do you put the priority? I know for us, it's probably, and for us, I mean the Texans, it's probably up front, getting more up front guys for Lovie Smith. That's just kind of the way he's always looked at the defense. You have the front four, and then we'll fill in the back. And then hopefully along the way, you can find a Peanut Tillman somewhere. You can find a Danielle Manning to play safety somewhere, and you rock there. But our scheme would be the one playing some coverage, playing Tampa 2, mixing in some 3 and some quarters, doing those kind of things. I think he's going to be a whale of a player, but I just think there's some habits he's got to break or allowed to go on longer. They're going to end up being a problem for him and his team.
You know, when we come back from our break, there's something I want to ask you about that with scheme and maybe the thought process, with building from the front to the back. We're going to get into that and also some guys that we're excited about with the combine. All right, but first, I want to talk to you a little bit about BetOnline. And football, the season might be over, but basketball is full steam ahead with the pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, total, player performance props, to where the next fire coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. All right, BetOnline, it remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. It's BetOnline.net. It's your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, odds, right to your Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. It's BetOnline, where the games start. All right, guys, definitely want to talk, get into some of these combine prospects. But first, John, I want to ask you, and obviously feel free to chime in on this as well, Ryan, but I want to know, all right, the San Francisco 49ers, this is a team that I definitely cover and I watch very closely. Everyone that covered the fans, they want to draft a cornerback. They think cornerback for the 49ers is the biggest need. They don't have corner. They need to do this. They need to do that. Who's the starter? They need a lockdown guy. All right. But even within that, the 49ers have done a terrific job with limiting teams. They held most quarterbacks under their averages for the season throughout the year. When they played in the playoffs, they had to play against the Dallas Cowboys, the highest scoring offense, one of the most explosive passing offenses in the league. They had to play against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers and the receivers that they have there. They had to play against the Rams, who eventually won the Super Bowl. And they held those 3 teams to, it was in the first game, 17 points to the Dallas Cowboys, highest scoring offense in the league, 17 points. Green Bay Packers, 10 points. And the Rams, it took everything in the Rams just to get 20 points. That was 12 points less than their average. All right, now, 49ers, they don't have these great corners on the outside, but it seems like they've gone with this philosophy of building from the front back. And John, I wanted to start with you because you just touched on the philosophy of maybe addressing the front end and doing everything you can there to maybe put pressure on quarterbacks and kind of playing on the outside with guys that might not be household names, but can potentially get the job done. Do you think that maybe what the 49ers are kind of doing, not putting a ton of resources into the cornerback position, whether it's on purpose or accident, is something that maybe teams might take that approach in the draft or free agency?
Yes, and I think there's a cross-section there of what you just said, Eric, and that is teams taking that philosophy. They see the Niners, not having a Jalen Ramsey or, a Darrelle Revis, if you will, not having a lockdown corner. And then you throw in the fact that, there aren't a ton of first-round caliber corners that I'm looking at in this draft. So it's kind of like this cross-section of, well, we should probably build from up front before we build from the back. And, oh, by the way, the guys at the back, they're not as good as the guys up front. And I think that's the other thing, too, is the guys up front in this draft, at least on the edge in particular, it's as deep a draft as you're going to find out in the edge. And then you throw in the philosophy. And I think it's interesting because over the summer, just kind of trying to understand Vic Fangio's defense, Brandon Staley's defense a little bit more, and listening to guys that really kind of study that defense a lot more than I have. And they're like, look, we build back to front, where it's safeties and corners dictating what we're going to do up front, as opposed to the other way around, which is, I guess, traditional. Oh, you think the front, then you think all the way to the back, but their defense thinks the other way around. And so I can see where the Chargers or a Fangio type defense would think, hey, safeties, corners, that's where it's at. That's where we've got to go. I know for us with Lovie Smith, and he's been around the game for a long time. So however you think about it, this is just the way he thinks about it. It's up front. We think front to back. We got to have dudes up front that can go get the quarterback. We got to have linebackers that have got to have some speed. And then when they were in Chicago, I don't remember them ever really putting a premium on drafting corners. And one of his scouts there was Chris Ballard. And Ballard was one of the best I've ever seen at finding some guy out of Central Arkansas, or finding Daniel Manning out of Abilene Christian to come play in his secondary. Guys that you just wouldn't think would is guy from Abilene Christian going to start for the Chicago Bears? And Daniel Manning did. And he, of course, came and started for the Texans as well. But that's what they did. Their premium was put on those front guys, the Tommy Harrises, even linebackers, Brian Urlacher. And I think that's the way I know that we're looking at it. But there are teams like the Chargers, Brandon Staley, they're thinking back to front. So they may put a little bit more of a premium on the back end guys, the safeties and the corners. But I look at the Niners, it's clear what they've put the premium on the last few years. Javon Kinlaw, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, Nick Bosa, those guys up front. And I saw it up close, Eric, out in San Francisco or Santa Clara near the end of the year. Those are dudes. I mean, they are dudes. And you can see exactly why that defense flourishes, because those four guys up front, whatever four guys they have up front, are going to get a single matchup, a one-on-one matchup, and they're going to win it. And they're going to win it a lot. And that's going to force those quarterbacks to throw the ball. And at that point, it doesn't matter who's back there. You don't have to have great coverage, because those guys are throwing the ball well before they're ready to, and the corners and safeties can then go make plays. So it's one philosophy. I don't know if it's better or worse than anybody else's. It's just different. So if you build back to front, that's one way. Front to back, another way. I think a lot of teams are more traditional in building front to back, and so they're putting a little bit more emphasis on the front guys. And if they are, this is the year that's going to pay off, because the edge guys in this draft are exceptional.
And there's plenty of them. And I'll tell you this.
Yes.
I think an exceptional front can make a mediocre secondary raise to a higher level as a defensive unit than excellent coverage without a mediocre or subpar pass rush.
Yep.
So I think your total as a defensive unit comes down to how can you help yourself the most? And maybe it's guys in place. Maybe it's a new coach coming in that feels he has assets at the back. And so it's pretty natural progression to go up front. At the end of the day, I think the most interesting thing for me is you need athleticism at both, but it's very different. And I think especially the last several years, it's been easier to find excellent athleticism, in particular pass rush, rather than coverage. And I think this draft is no different. So there's more value there. There's more opportunity to help your total defense by going up front.
I think one thing that fans have to understand is how hard it is to cover guys in the NFL, especially in today's day and age, man. It's so difficult. And if you're searching for a shutdown corner, you're probably going to be disappointed. What you were better off having is just guys that can play good football and make plays here and there, because offenses are going to kind of get theirs. And if you can have a scheme that kind of limits the big plays, and, even 49ers, not great guys, but hey, the sixth best pass defense in the NFL somehow. I don't know how. Maybe it's because of the pass rush, whatever it is. They're limiting opposing teams, and maybe we'll start to see more teams kind of do those things. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about, one, some guys that we're excited about seeing at the Combine, and two, some sleepers. But first, I want to talk to you about Built Bar. All right. This time of the year, pretty much everyone has given up on a New Year's resolution, but not this year. At least I'm not going to, because I'm sticking to my New Year's resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. And it's almost like you're not even really using the whole resolution thing, because you enjoy eating them. And have y'all tried the new Built Bar Puffs? If you haven't, you are missing out. They are a one-of-a-kind Built Bar, and it's definitely the best tasting bar that they have. Especially, it's definitely my favorite. All right. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They are fluffy. They are marshmallowy. They are not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they are covered with 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite for those who have tried it right now, and they have some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, all very, very good. And they're going to be your new favorites, I guarantee it. Built Bars are covered with 100% real chocolate. Yes, this includes the puffs, 100% real chocolate. And just like all the other Built Bars, they are packed with low calories, high in protein, and you can replace that with any candy bar because they are better and much healthier for you, especially with candy bars that can have anywhere between 200 and 300 calories. All right, crazy. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away by the high protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb that these bars have. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar. And I mean, they usually have around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. All right, mint brownie, coconut almond. Those are some of the flavors that they have right now and many more. Just this month, they have the new white chocolate cookies and cream. It's very delicious, and they're always coming out with new flavors all the time. And if you think of a flavor that you think might be good, they might make it. And if they do, it'll be delicious. All right. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make the taste first, and they want to make it taste delicious, and then they figure out how to make it healthy. All right. I don't know how they do it, but they come through every time. All right. So just go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. All right. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, y'all. Let's talk about some sleepers that we have, or maybe just some guys that you're looking forward to seeing run at the combine or test, or just how they move, how they look. All right. So Ryan, we'll start with you. All right. Is there any guy that just jumped straight to mind where you're like, you know what? I question maybe some long speed, some short area quickness, or just how they're going to look compared to other guys in throwing drills or whatever it is. Who are you looking most forward to seeing perform at the combine?
Yeah, there's one guy in particular that stood out, and we all saw him down in Mobile as well. He's popped a couple of times on tape for me. I need to go back and see some more, but he also had, I thought, pretty good start to the week. He ended up getting hurt. Braylon Sanders from Ole Miss is a guy that I want to see what kind of top end he has. And I think it was an ankle injury in Mobile, so I'm not sure if he's even going to be 100%. But if he's able to perform, it looked like he was in and out of his routes pretty quickly. I want to see that change of direction and what his top speed is for a guy that I haven't heard much press on so far.
I'm going to jump in with a guy I'm excited about to see at the combine and combine it with a sleeper all in one guy. And he's in my Harris 100. I have him at number 78. And I feel like in his game, it's funny, we've been talking about corners this whole time. And when you see him, you're like, that's not a corner, that's a small forward. And it's Tariq Woolen from out of UTSA. He was standing down in front of me at the Senior Bowl, down with the defensive back group. And Zion McCollum is another guy that I love out of Sam Houston, 6'2", 200 pounds. I've been calling Zion's games for a long time. So I know Zion for a corner is a big guy. And Tariq Woolen is standing next to him and looking down at Zion. I'm like, dang, 6'3" and a quarter. Apparently, he's got 4.3 speed. And I say apparently just because I don't know the actual number. But I will say this, and this is kind of the good and bad of tape. Tariq is going to blow a coverage in a game. There's no doubt. I can promise you he's going to blow a coverage a game. It happened in every game that I watched. And against UNLV, he thought he had safety help. They were playing quarters. The safety bid, they were running mills, so the safety bid on a dig. And so he thought he had safety help, so he kind of quit as the receiver's running the post. And he catches the ball. And I mean, Woolen's like, oh, man. And I'm telling you, he's 20 yards behind a guy at about the 40-yard line. 60 yards later, he's tagging him off on the shoulder pads at the goal line. And I thought, okay, he blew the coverage, but holy cow, that guy can fly. So there's some things to clean up in his game. I can't wait to see that guy, long legs and all, at 6'3", 200 pounds, just run and see what his actual time is. And I think when he runs in the 4.3s at his size, I think the media analysts are going to be all over Tariq Woolen from out of UTSA.
Yeah, extremely long cornerback and fairly new to the position. This is a guy who's transitioned, playing the receiver position, and then the last couple of years, like, hey, try cornerback. And he's like, all right. He definitely has some long movements. And we saw some of the inconsistencies even at the Senior Bowl, right, where One play, he looks terrific. He's manhandling receivers. The next play, he's giving up a deep ball. And it's not because of lack of ability. I like how you talked about how he sprint and tagged off on the guy at the goal line, just kind of showing that explosive ability that he has. People think that he's going to test off of the charts. And if anyone is interested in kind of having a guy where they can draft and develop, and maybe even if it's not corner, but maybe he's the safety or whatever it is, he's the guy because he's going to have some freakish athletic talent. And they're expecting jumping out the building 40 plus inches. Broad jump, they're thinking is going to be crazy. And his 40-yard dash as well. You talked about 4.3. I've heard some people whisper potentially 4.2. So that's going to be one guy that I'm definitely interested in seeing. Another guy, Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. And, he did extremely well at the Senior Bowl, got the Receiver of the Week award from his team. He also, for most people he asked, was the best receiver there. This guy that measured in at 6'4", 211 pounds. So he definitely has the size. But at North Dakota State, he looked like the fastest guy on the field. He looked like potentially a 4.3 guy. And watching him in person, I saw him get behind some guys, but I wasn't sure if I saw 4.3 or low 4.4s. So I'm definitely going to be interested to seeing how well does he run. And really more so to just know, can he beat the high-level defensive backs in the NFL that are maybe coming from bigger schools? Can he beat those guys vertically like he did some of the guys in the FCS division? I'm going to be intrigued by that. So he's a guy I'm definitely looking to see how well does he run.
As I was talking, I kind of raised up and I was like, oh man, I got another one. And I looked at my shirt and I was like, oh yeah, I was wearing my Oregon shirt. And it made me think of one guy from Oregon that, it's funny. I got some friends of mine in radio here in Houston and they always make fun of nobody's talking about guy. That guy that's always like, hey, nobody's talking about this. Well, nobody is talking about Devin Williams, the wide receiver from Oregon. And
is that the Penn State transfer?
No, this is the USC transfer.
Okay.
And he's 6'5". At least that's what they list him at. So, okay, let's say he's 6'4", but he's 207. And you talk about long legs and just a small forward out playing wide receiver. And I'd sort of not paying too much attention to him. I mean, I wanted to see other aspects of Oregon and not really him, looking more at what Joe Moorhead was doing offensively. And I can't remember what game it was. I was like, yo, who's number 2? Wow, this guy's got something. I watched another couple of games, and I thought, nobody's talking about this guy, Devin Williams, at 6'4", 207. If that guy runs well with the athletic ability and coming out of high school, he's a 5-star. So he's got some natural ability. Nobody's mentioning Devin Williams at all. I don't have him in my 100, but, man, he is a fun watch. I'm curious to see what he does at the Combine, how well he runs. And being underclassman, I mean, you haven't seen the Senior Bowl. He's kind of off the radar because he plays in the Pac-12, overshadowed by the receivers. So Devin Williams is another guy to me that's kind of a sleeper that I'm excited to see at the Combine.
I want to know, do you have any sleepers? We talked about some Combine guys, but I know, just in general, maybe some sleepers in the draft right now that aren't really being talked about. And I don't even know if this guy is a sleeper, but he definitely has a lot of talent. He's put it on full display. He's had some very productive seasons, but he's not getting talked about like some of the other receivers in this class. And that's David Bell out of Purdue. Ooh. This is a guy that has size. He has ability. He has production. He's done it all. But, these receiver classes over the last few years have been so deep. Some guys that are really good. And he's one of the guys where I think people were talking about him being a top 3 or 4 receiver in his class before the season. It's kind of been bumped down because of maybe the emergence of guys like Jameson Williams and Treylon Burks and these other guys. But, I mean, David Bell, he's a guy I think the more people watch, they're going to be really high on him.
I completely agree with you. And there's another couple. The wide receivers got a ton of it just because of the depth of the position, right? The fact that they didn't invite Jared Stearns to the Combine, I think is a serious miscalculation. Mighty Mouse is going to make some noise at that pro day. Make sure you keep an eye out for them. Another guy that I just watched the other day that kind of really stood out for me in athleticism. He won't be at the Combine either. Kekala Kaniho, the nickel/safety from Boise State. Flashes sometimes. He's a little undersized, but he's real quick. He's real aggressive. Comes on the blitz a lot. I like his game, and I want to see more from him. I'm going to study him up, but we'll have to get his pro day as well.
Yeah. And then one other guy that I'm definitely interested in seeing is Vincent Gray, cornerback out of Michigan. I think he's a little underrated in this class, not in the sense of being a day 1 or even an early day 2 pick, but, watching him at cornerback, I just did a bunch of film on him for a podcast, and I thought it was somebody that moved well, not overly twitchy, but he can run vertically with guys well. Didn't see an issue there. Good feet. Talked about feet before hands. Thought he was really consistent with that. He has the size, he has the ability, but another guy that, cornerback, I think this is potentially a good class in day 2. I'm interested to see where he ends up falling in, and maybe him running well will help maybe his draft stock or kind of put him on the radar of a lot of people that are draft evaluators.
Yeah, no doubt. One final sleeper for me, a guy that's not going to be at the combine, and I got to bring him up just because I love watching him play football. He's a little short. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the fastest guy in the world. But you talk about twitch and you talk about explosive, and you just talk about it when you put the ball in his hands, something magical happens. That's Jaquez Ezzard from out of Sam Houston State. As a kick returner, as a punt returner, as a wide receiver, as a running back. I mean, there's so many different things that you could do. He's not the biggest guy in the world, man, but his change of direction is absolutely insane. And I've talked to, obviously, his coaches at Sam Houston, but also talked to his coach, Brennan Marion, from Howard. And he said, when I got there at Howard, they told me he's a return guy. Oh, he's a good return guy. That's all he'd be. And he said 2 years at Howard, he was the best player we had. They transferred to Sam, and he did it in the spring of 2021. He was unbelievable. I was like, how is this guy at Sam? No offense, guys, but this guy should be playing, major Division I football, and that's obviously what Brennan said to me as well. And he won't be at the combine, but when he has his pro day, he'll have a 42+ vert. He'll probably go sub-4 in the short shuttle. He might be a 4.5 guy, but man, his quickness and change of direction is just sick, and I can't wait to see what Ezra does when he gets to the NFL.